The wind tore across the barren plains of Karath, seven like a wild animal, carrying with it the tang of ozone and dust. Captain Elias Turner trudged through the rough terrain, his exosuit's thrusters barely compensating for the planet's irregular gravitational fluctuations. His mission was simple, or so the Alliance had assured him. Capture an unclassified creature, the likes of which no human had ever subdued, and study it. Yet, as he approached the jagged cliffs marking the creature's territory, Elias felt the familiar tingle of anxiety. He wasn't afraid of monsters. Not really. He'd faced the berserk drones of Varkon, 12, the psychic predators of Orlax, and survived. No, what unsettled him was the story he'd heard from the colonists stationed here. The creature, known locally as the Varrock, was not merely dangerous. It was intelligent, almost sentient, and utterly untouchable. The Varrock's lair was nestled in a labyrinth of crystalline caves that shimmered under Koroth 7's twin suns. As Elias reached the entrance, his sensors picked up a presence, something large, tense, and aware. He crouched behind a crystalline outcrop and activated the scope on his helmet. There it was. The Varrock was unlike anything he'd seen before. Its body was a mass of chitinous armor and sinewy muscle, covered in iridescent scales that flickered with every movement. Its 6 eyes glowed faintly, intelligent, probing, almost human in their calculation. But what made the creature truly terrifying wasn't its size or claws. It was the way it seemed to measure him, to understand him. Elias exhaled slowly.
He knew the plan.
Calm it, don't provoke it, and use the neural tether to establish a link. He adjusted the tether, a device designed to sync a human's neural signals with an alien brain. But the Varrock was notorious for rejecting every attempt at control.
Until today.
3 hours earlier, he had received the briefing. Captain Turner, Commander Ralvik had said, this creature isn't like the others. It's not a mindless predator. It has instincts, emotions, maybe even morality. Standard containment procedures won't work. We're counting on you to tame it. Elias had frowned. Tame it? You want me to bond with a creature that could tear my head off in 2 seconds? Ralvik's expression was unreadable. Humans have a unique neural frequency. It's why we're trying you instead of a synth. You might succeed where others have failed. And now, crouched before the Varrock, Elias understood exactly why. This creature wasn't just strong, it was aware, cunning, and proud. He extended a hand slowly, letting the neural tether hum with gentle pulses. The Varrock froze, its eyes narrowing. A subtle hiss escaped its mandibles, vibrating the air like a warning. Elias stayed still, speaking softly, letting his thoughts mingle with the tether. I'm not your enemy, he projected mentally. I don't want to hurt you. Just understand. The Varrock tilted its massive head. One eye, a bright emerald, seemed to pierce him through the scope. Then something unexpected happened. The creature stepped back, not in aggression but in curiosity. Elias held his breath. It's considering me. It took another hour before the Varrock allowed him to approach closer. Every step was a negotiation, every pause a test. By the time he reached the central cavern, the creature was circling him, slow, deliberate, observing. That's when he noticed the symbols etched into the cavern walls. Ancient markings, alien but undeniably sophisticated. They depicted humans, or something resembling humans, interacting with creatures much like the Varrock. His heart skipped. Could it be that this species had once communicated with humans? The thought distracted him just long enough for the Varrock to rear back and roar. The sound shook the cavern, a thunderous vibration that rattled his teeth. He stumbled, nearly dropping the tether. But then, unexpectedly, the creature stopped mid-roar. It lowered its head, sniffing him cautiously. It was then that Elias made the boldest move of his life. He knelt, unarmed, and extended both hands, showing no threat, only trust. The Varrock watched him for a heartbeat that felt like an eternity. Then, with a suddenness that shocked him, the creature leaned forward and nudged his helmet with its snout. The neural tether sparked to life. Elias's mind filled with sensations, textures, smells, memories that weren't his. But they were coherent, not chaotic. The Varrock was thinking, communicating, and it wanted him to understand. The alien woman appeared shortly after. She emerged from a hidden alcove, cloaked in a flowing iridescent garment that shimmered like the creature's scales. Her eyes, wide, alien, but unmistakably intelligent, locked onto the Varrock and then on Elias. You've tamed it? Her voice was melodic, but every word carried disbelief. Elias straightened slowly. It's not tamed in the way you think. I didn't force it. I communicated. The woman's eyes narrowed. No human has ever done that. Not by words, not by tether, not by any device. You are extraordinary. Elias gave her a small, weary smile. Extraordinary or lucky? Maybe both. She studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she stepped closer, her movements fluid and deliberate. If you can do this, then perhaps we can end the centuries of misunderstanding between our species. Elias blinked. I didn't come here for diplomacy. I came here for survival and study. She shook her head, a ripple of luminescent hair flowing around her shoulders. Survival and study are fleeting. Trust is eternal. What you have done is more valuable than any data you could extract. Over the next few days, Elias and the woman, who introduced herself as Kalara, worked together to deepen the bond with the Varrock. Through the tether, they shared thoughts, dreams, and intentions. Elias learned that the Varrock was a guardian, a protector of an ancient civilization long lost to time. Kalara explained that her people had once coexisted with humans before fear and conflict drove them apart. The bond between Elias and the Varrock grew stronger. He could anticipate its movements, feel its emotions, and even influence its decisions gently. No commands, only shared understanding. And Kalara, observing this, seemed increasingly amazed. You understand it, she said one evening as they watched the twin suns set over the crystalline plains. More than any of us ever have. You speak its language without words. Elias shrugged, looking down at his hands. I guess I just listened. She smiled faintly. Humans rarely do that. You are rare indeed. The Varrock, meanwhile, had begun to show trust in ways that had never been seen before. It allowed Kalara to approach, it followed Elias without restraint, and it even mimicked human gestures in playful displays. It was no longer a creature to fear. It was an ally, a partner, a living bridge between worlds. But peace was fragile. The Alliance fleet, alerted by Elias's transmissions, arrived on Karath, 7 with the intent to capture the Varrock by force. Hundreds of soldiers descended from dropships, weapons drawn, unaware of the bond he had forged. Elias stood at the center of the cavern, the Varrock looming protectively behind him. Kalara's hand rested lightly on his arm. You cannot let them take it, she warned. I won't, Elias said, determination hardening his voice. We do this together. As the soldiers approached, the Varrock let out a deafening roar that shook the crystalline caves. Elias raised his hands, not to fight, but to communicate. Through the tether, he shared calm, fearlessness, and trust. The Varrock mirrored his intent, stepping forward, its massive form a living barricade. The soldiers faltered, unsure how to react to a creature that obeyed a human's mind without coercion. Elias spoke to them over the comms. Stand down. It's not a weapon. It's not a threat. It can be an ally, but only if you respect it. For a tense moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, the soldiers lowered their weapons. They didn't understand how, but they felt the truth in his words. The Varrock would not be broken by force. After the Alliance fleet departed, Elias, Kalara, and the Varrock stood together on the cliffs, watching the sun rise. You've done something incredible, Kalara said softly, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder. You've bridged the impossible. Elias looked at the Varrock, who blinked its luminous eyes at him with unmistakable affection. We did it together, he corrected. Kalara nodded. Then perhaps the future of our species lies not in conquest, but in understanding. Elias smiled. For the first time in his career, he felt the weight of victory not in weapons or strategy, but in connection. And as the twin sons of Karath, Seven bathed the world in gold and violet, he realized that the most extraordinary creatures were not the ones he had faced in battle. They were the ones he had learned to listen to. The Varrock nuzzled him gently, and Kalara stepped forward, her eyes filled with wonder. Together, the three of them faced the horizon, not as hunter and hunted, but as partners in a new chapter of interstellar history. And in that moment, Elias understood something profound. The universe wasn't conquered by force. It was bridged by trust, courage, and the willingness to see another being as an equal. The alien woman couldn't believe it. A human had tamed what had never been tamed before. And in doing so, he had tamed more than a creature. He had tamed the fear, the misunderstanding, and the centuries of mistrust between their worlds. For Elias, Kalara, and the Varrock, the future was no longer a question of survival. It was a promise of possibility.